Welcome to my house. Well, this week we're going to be doing the pre-recorded lectures instead of having the Zoom or having it in the classroom. Of course, this is Thanksgiving week and y'all voted, and the vote came through very high. It's like 75% to do the pre-recorded lecture, and then I think we had like 10% classrooms / Zoom, and then we had several who said they didn't really care. So anyhow, so the majority has spoken. Well, this is my house. Actually, you can see this is the library portion of my house. But my house is kind of off close to the lake, or 2222. And when I built the house, I decided that, I don't have a lot of books. So anyhow, as you can see back here, I do collect books. And this room itself actually is about 30 feet tall. It's a two-story room that actually has kind of an atrium in the center. And I'm sitting on one of the other parts of the balcony here. You can look across and see, as you look back over here, you can see the other side of it. And then down below is kind of where my desk is. So I'm just kind of sitting here in a chair against the rail on the other side. Actually, it's a very small rail. Oh, you see what I'm holding here? I'm holding here my magic wands. Kind of interesting here. This is the, Bumbledorf, whatever that guy's name is. This is his wand. This is the Voldemort. I think I'm saying that right. All these are Harry Potter wands, by the way. I always like this one here. They're very easy to hold on to. And then my Harry Potter wand. And the reason why I'm holding this is because today you're going to be watching a series of my lectures. There's actually 3 of them all put in together. I did it that way so that you can stop and just kind of, or just keep going through. The first one is really about leadership, and it talks a little bit about, you'll see, it talks a little bit about Harry Potter in the very beginning. So I have gotten these wands every time I go over to Oxford, and every time I go there, I get another one. The only thing about it, I didn't get one the first few times I was there. And the second part of the lecture goes into corporate culture, organizational culture. Now, you've already probably have remember from the other lectures about what we call ethnic culture or international culture. Then this goes into corporate culture. And then the third part of the lecture, and you're going to see, because you'll be able to tell the difference as it goes from one to the other, because first of all, the background of the PowerPoint changes. The third part is about management. And it's probably you've seen, some of you maybe actually see it. This is the part about conducting, or actually managing like a conductor, like a symphonic conductor. And I mentioned in there that I do this because I was actually a student conductor in my earlier lives. So I've dealt with conducting, not symphonic orchestras, but conducting orchestras, things like that. And it always amazes me how the correlation between a conductor and the musicians is so important, in how it really can make the difference if they're good or bad. And then, of course, you have to have talent too, but then how that actually also meets over to being a manager of a company. Now, I know that, because I can see how many people watch these things, and I know a few of you watched it before, so if you've already seen it, and I say a few, those a few. If you've already seen it, that's fine. Don't worry about watching it again. But if you haven't seen it, I would encourage you to watch it, because very likely, like I've told you, is that exam questions are coming off of this entire video, recorded video, about the leadership, about corporate culture, and also a little bit about the conducting too. Hope you enjoy it, and now I'll let you go straight into the lectures. Just a little bit about leadership in organizations, and to kind of get into it, we're going to talk a little bit about culture too, organizational culture. And this is actually a picture here of Boston, Massachusetts. And one of the things that's in Boston that is very interesting is this picture. Now, where is this? Well, this is actually at Harvard, in Harvard University. So let's go back to that picture. What does it look like to you? Actually, that is the undergraduate dining hall. Have you seen a picture like this before? Does this kind of resemble something? Maybe something that you've seen in the movies? Well, yes. You remember in the Harry Potter movies, doesn't it look a little bit like that? Where all the students are lined up eating. But I want to tell you something, is that it actually was not developed after Harvard, even though it looks like that. It was developed after this room. This room was at the University of Oxford. This is actually in one of their colleges called Christ College. And here you can see it actually looks very, very similar. And this is what Harry Potter was pretty much modeled after. Not so much this, even though it does look like this with the ceilings and the lights hanging down, a little bit more like this, which, like I said, is a Christ College. And this is Christ College. And Christ College at Oxford, and this is part of Oxford. Now, what's interesting about Oxford is that Oxford is a collection of a bunch of colleges. You see the left-hand corner there, all the different seals. So you have, I think they got like 34, 35 different colleges, and those colleges, each one specializes in a different discipline: English, philosophy, chemistry, business, government, whatever. And people live in those colleges. You have faculty assigned to those colleges, and you got the classrooms in those colleges. Now, contrary to that, you have on the other side here, you have Harvard. And Harvard actually is one big university. So you have different departments, but you don't have people literally living in those departments. You may have people with offices there, but you don't have students living there. They will go live in a dorm. Now, why do I tell you about all this? Because you can get a little better understanding when you start seeing how different things react differently, particularly when you're talking about organizational culture, how things can be turned, and how we use different ways depending upon where we're actually located. So we're going to talk a little bit about the internal environment of organizations. So when you're talking about internal environment, you have to sit there and look at things that are important to the company: the vision, the mission, the leadership, and of course the corporate culture. And that's what we're going to talk about very quickly. So let's start talking about the vision. And I want to relate this a little bit back over to those pictures, even though they're more fun than they're educational about Harry Potter and all that. But every university, just like every corporate entity, has a vision of what they're trying to communicate. And what you see is what we call the artifacts, kind of like the old buildings at Oxford or Harvard, those dining halls. Now, what is a vision? A vision basically is what the company wants to be. It's something people used to say is something they'll never ever reach, they'll never get to, but it's something they want to be known as. For example, Southwest Airlines, they want to be known as the airline of choice. But even better than that is U.S. Department of Education. Their vision is no child left behind. Do you think they ever can get to that? Probably not. That's the reason why they say a vision is what you're always working to get to. You may not get to it, but you always got this where you're working to get to it. A corporate mission is a little bit different. A corporate mission is what the company wants to be known for. So in the case of, let's look at Target here, they want to be known for expect more, pay less. So you can read their actual mission statement here. It's great: to make Target the preferred shopping destination of our guests by delivering outstanding value, continuous innovation, exceptional guest experience by consistently fulfilling our expect more, pay less brand promise, circa 1881. Can you imagine they have that? What is that, 140 years? They've had that same mission statement. Ascension Healthcare is a Catholic hospital system, and their mission is serving each patient as if we were serving Christ himself. That's rather strong, isn't it? Very, very, very potent, very, very powerful on that. Now let's talk about leadership for a second, because leadership is the way you manage the human assets of your company. And you have also what's called the box style, and this is a little bit what we call the box style, and this is where you have 3 arrows going directions. And most leaders will pick one or two of these arrows. Very seldom you see them picking 3, but most of them they just really follow one. And these are transactional, transformative, and servant leadership. The first one let's talk about is the transactional leadership. And transactional leadership means that the person is giving out directions like they are military, like a general telling the sergeant what to do. This is a picture here of Lee Iacocca. Lee Iacocca, he was known because he took Chrysler out of bankruptcy and made it a really, really good, profitable car company. But it's because he had a really good vision, he has a great mission, and he knew how to do it. I always refer to transactional leadership as the Captain Kirk on the USS Enterprise Star Trek mentality, where you sit there in your chair and you tell people what to do. Fire that phaser, fire those torpedoes. That's what a transactional leader does. And that is really good. People like Lee Iacocca does a great job. Now, the problem is is that there's a lot of leaders out there who are transactional leaders who don't know what they're doing. They don't know the proper way to do things. And instead of leading their company out of a bankrupt situation or helping them to grow, instead they take them into a bankruptcy because they have bad management styles, they have bad ideas. They don't actually know what to do with the company, where Lee Iacocca was a little bit different. Now, how does that type of leader communicate? This is what we call the human action communications, where basically you can see here the leader is the box and the leader tells the audience, the stakeholders, the employees what to do. It's a one-way communications. Now let's move over to the next one, the transformation leadership or transformative leader. This lady here, she was the president of Pitney Bowes, and she was known to be a transformative leader. Now what's the difference between transactional and transformative? The transformative leader is like a funnel. They take all the ideas from the staff, from the employees. They encourage people to come up with ideas, come up with thoughts, and it all funnels to the leader, and the leader then arranges it, sees what's good, what's bad, and then it funnels back out again, and then they implement it. So at this point, the leader isn't saying, you've got to do it my way. The leader is sitting there saying, give me the ideas. I'm going to transform them into what can work for our company, how it fits our mission, how it fits our vision. And this has been very popular. As a matter of fact, I think it was the 1980s, 1990s, where this became extremely popular, that you were transforming your company by letting the employees be empowered to come up with the ideas. Now, the communication model for this one here is what we call a transaction. A transaction means that the communication is going back and forth. So the employees tell the leaders, this is what we think. The leaders say, well, let's refine this. Tell me again. It keeps going back and forth, going kind of through that funnel. Now, maybe you all know Walt Disney. You probably do. I mean, he's a very popular guy. He died back in the 1960s. As a matter of fact, he was a little bit of all three of these leaders. He was a transactional leader. He told people what to do. He had a great vision. He knew what to do. So therefore, actually, everything that they did turned out very, very good, basically. But he's also transformative because he wanted his people to tell him ideas. He didn't call them engineers, he called them Imagineers. So he wanted them to imagine things, and they told him about it, and they went through his funnel. And there's actually a movie made called Saving Mr. Banks, where Tom Hanks played Walt Disney. And Saving Mr. Banks was very interesting because this is where you're seeing Walt Disney coming through as a servant leader. Now, in this picture here, you see Tom Hanks, and this lady next to him was called P.L. Travers. Her real name was Helen Goff, but she used the name P.L. Travers, and she wrote a set of books. And that set of books are the Mary Poppins books. And the first Mary Poppins film was made back, I think, in 1964, thereabout. But the story is that ever going back to 1940, Walt Disney, when he first saw the books, Mary Poppins, that his kids were reading, he wanted to get the rights to make movies of them. But P.L. Travers would not let him have the rights. And the reason why, she said, you're going to turn it into a cartoon. You're going to turn it into something no one is going to like. You're going to destroy my Mary Poppins. And she even got to the point that she said that if I give you the rights, which she did, because she got into financial situations and she sold him the rights only on the condition that she was the creative director and that she had final say. He agreed to that because he wanted him so bad. He knew he was going to make a great picture with Julie Andrews and Dick Van Dyke. But she even got to the point that she said, not only do I want no cartoons, I want nothing red in the movie. Nothing red. Think about that for a second. How can you make a movie with nothing red? Just this picture here, you can see a red back there in the back somewhere. Well, Walt Disney said, this doesn't make sense at all. He said, my goodness, this takes place in London. You got red mailboxes. You got those red phone booths. My goodness, he said, the British flag is red. He said, I cannot make a movie without red. And she couldn't quite figure out what's going on that. But this is where he became a servant leader, because he started to dig down. He's trying to figure out what was causing this attitude. So he was looking, and look at the servant leadership. He was trying to build a community with her. He was trying to to go in there and do some persuasion, do some listening, try and be empathetic. It turned up that one of the reasons why she was so opposed to red was because her father, whose name was Travers Goff, that's how she picked up the name P.L. Travers, actually died when she was young, and he died of tuberculosis. If you know anything about tuberculosis, you're coughing up, and unfortunately you cough up blood in the latter stages. So she was seeing her father cough up red blood. So she was very opposed to red, and she was using that a little bit just to control Disney, but she also did have an issue with red. Disney, as a servant leader, said, it's not what I want, but let's see what the problems were. Let's have some foresight. And he started listening to her, and he started this healing process of saying, let's talk about this. Let's see what we can do to make this type of movie into what you like. And over time, they became good workers, and he became a great leader to her because he was empathetic. It says he listened, and he was trying to heal things. As a matter of fact, in the movie, you start seeing that the person who plays the father, Mr. Banks, he actually wears a red carnation. And so it's amazing how he moved it from no red to one of the stars in there actually wears the red carnation. Now, the servant leader model is a communication model that is an interaction, where you have this constant communication. It doesn't go and come back. It just always flows. Sometimes you can sit there and say there's interruptions along the way, but that's what it is. Let me show you a good example of servant leadership. No, not really. I just have to put that picture in there anyhow. No, it is going to be Truett Cathy, who founded Chick-fil-A. He did die in 1914. But some of the things that he really believed in, one of the things he said, my employees need some time off. So he decided, even though he lost money, to close all the restaurants on Sunday. He also said that he didn't want to make the company public. He wanted to be able to control it for the benefit of the employees. He gave a lot of the money that they made off of the profits to foster homes, to abused and neglected children. He has scholarships for their younger employees to go for education. And then the very bottom here, it says he always took time to talk to any employee who wanted to speak to him. So there are 9 qualities, and many of these is what Truett Cathy came up with about servant leadership. You value the opinions of others. You want diverse opinions. You want different opinions coming in. And you can't say you know all the answers. You listen to other people. You cultivate a culture of trust. You develop other leaders. A good leader surrounds themselves with other good leaders, and then you appreciate those people and you try to build them up, and you help people with life issues, just like Walt Disney was trying to help P.L. Travers with issues that she had embedded for years. You also encourage people, and I like this, it says you sell and you don't tell. Remember, Lee Iacocca, when he was the transactional leader, he would tell people what to do. And even transformative leader, you would take the ideas, but you would tell people. A servant leader, they don't tell people, they sell people the ideas of what they think is going to help the vision, the mission of the company. The best thing here is the window and the mirror. And the way this works is that the servant leader, when things are going great, they're looking out the window and they say, it's because of my employees. It's because of the stakeholders. Those are the people who are making things go great. But when things are going bad, that window becomes a mirror, and that servant leader looks at the mirror and says, the reason why there's problems is because I'm doing something wrong. I need to listen more to my employees. The transactional, the transformative leader, a little bit different. When things are going great, they look in the mirror and say, it's going great because of me. And when things are going bad, they look out the window and they say, things are going bad because my employees are not doing what they need to be doing. So that's where you see a tremendous difference between those first two and the third. The servant leader thinks long-term, and the last one is they act with humility. Now, this is a great way to end. This is our last slide. And here you can see that a corporate culture is just like an iceberg, where you only see a little bit of the iceberg at the top. Artifacts looks like it's misspelled here, but you can only see the artifacts, things that represent the environment, the corporation, and you maybe see some of the behaviors. But what you don't see, which is under the waterline, are those standards, those beliefs, those basic premises they operate under, the way they embrace values.
And this is a problem we get into because we don't always realize the way those organizations truly operate behind the doors. So as a servant leader, what you try to do is raise that iceberg up where people can see your standards, they can see your beliefs, because if they can see them, the public will hold you accountable and hold you responsible. A transactional leader will try to push them down. They want them below the waterline. They want them behind the doors. So in case something's going wrong, people don't know about it.
Okay, now let's talk a little bit about organizational and corporate culture. And it's kind of fascinating because what it does, it actually will help you to understand more about your organization and the way your organizational functions and why it basically exists. So when you're looking at a corporate culture, you can look at certain things that they actually put in their vision or mission statement. And these things, quite often they're going to start with it and it's going to pretty much explain the way they are. So for example, they may say we're here to create something, or we're here to serve the public in this way, or we're here to help people understand. We're here to produce the best products, or we're here to lead people in defining more about themselves or whatever, or we're here to teach, kind of like the Department of Education, No Child Left Behind, even though they didn't say teach in there. So when you look at some of the corporate companies out there, you can see in their mission vision statement, like CVS Pharmacy, we will be the easiest pharmacy retailers for customers to use. Then come down there and look down the very bottom, IKEA. We're here to create a better everyday life. And we start looking at some of the other ones here. So for example, let's take a look here at Microsoft to help people around the world to realize full potential. Starbucks to inspire. Then you've got Zappos to provide the best customer service. So what makes that so interesting is that it actually will go in there and it will set the tone for your culture. And that tone is pretty much what the employees will follow. Now, here's the Starbucks corporate mission statement. And here is a little bit over the top, I think, because they go into how they're going to do their coffee, how they're going to act with their partners or customers or stores or neighborhood, their shareholders and all that. That's a little bit too much in there. But let's go back and think about, and Starbucks was not too far off the mark. They just went a little bit too broad with it. Is that when you're talking about the organizational culture, you're trying to get people to understand your corporate environment. So you're setting tone for the organization. It plays a major role in shaping the culture of an organization. And you have this vision of where you're going to. You have the vision of how you should get there. And when you communicate this, you actually embed it into your marketing. So not only is your corporation has this culture on the inside of the way people operate. We're going to talk a little bit more about this in a moment, but also you embed it into your branding, into your marketing, and then the public sees you in that sense. But we're not really that concerned about the branding and marketing. You'll learn that in your marketing classes. This is a management class, and we're going to be more concerned about how you're going to operate your people on the inside and how you get them to get embedded into these different types of culture. Now, there's basically 3 different types of culture, but let's define what corporate culture is. It's the collective way we do things around here, basically. It involves a learned set of behaviors that tells us what we should be doing, what is important, and what we should avoid. And basically, that's the definition of a corporate culture, how we do things around here. Now, you probably remember when we were talking about Edgar Schein and you read all about him, he talks about these 3 components that make up a culture. It doesn't matter if it's a ethnic international culture or a corporate culture or whatever it is. You've got your artifacts, which are things you can see. Maybe that, when you walk into Google, you can see the sleep pods. That could be a corporate culture artifacts. You got your values, which could be something like you saw CVS, that they're trying to be the easiest place to shop. Then the basic assumptions is how we do things here. So that may be like Chase Bank or Bank of America, where people are dressed in suits or they're dressed in not instead polos, maybe they're button-down cotton collar shirts. Now, this is, of course, the iceberg, and the word artifact, I'm not sure why they spelled it that way. I didn't do that. But what's so good about this picture is that it does explain to you, like we've seen this picture before, is that you can see on the top the behavior and the artifacts, which you cannot see below the surface, are all those beliefs that are in the culture, the basic premises, and then the things that are embraced in terms of the value. But when you look at corporate cultures, you can put them into three categories, what we call the performance cultures. Now, there's other ones out there, but these are the three that are the basic ones. And they're the symphony culture, the baseball team culture, and the fortress culture. So we'll go through each one of these. It's kind of interesting. The symphony culture. Think about a symphony, and you got your conductor, you got all these musicians out there. Those musicians are very highly skilled. You have your first chair, second chair, third chair. And think about a symphony where these people try out. And like it says, their employees are very highly skilled, and they tend to stay in the organizations while working their way up the ranks. Just like if the first chair of violin is to leave and go somewhere else, the second chair of violin very likely will go become the first chair. So you're not necessarily going out there hiring people to come in there. You're moving them up. So employees have assigned tasks. They work within groups, kind of like all the violins, all the violas, all the cellos, with each member being regarded as higher or better than the one below them. So what's an example of this type of culture? Well, this may be like a stock market. I mean, not stock market, a stock brokerage, where you've got people who are very expert in what they're doing, and they are good, and they have the people below them. Maybe as they leave, someone is moved up to take on their clients, but at the same time, that stock brokerage may actually go out there, hire somebody, and bring them in to fulfill, because they're bringing in even a bigger expert. So that's called the symphony culture. And the whole idea here is that what you've got people who work up. So if you're the third chair, or you're the third in line, you move to the second, to the first chair, whatever it is, same thing in the organization. So you go in there, you're highly specialized, and you move up. Now, the baseball team culture is a little bit different, because employees here work like free agents. They are very highly prized, and they're very skilled. They are in high demand, and they could get jobs elsewhere. Like it says, the members here work as a team, but they very much remain autonomous in their action. This is a very fast-paced culture too. And a good example of this would be a sales culture. So you sit there and you think about, and I'm going to use an example like, let's say Airbus, Boeing, or whatever. They have very high paid positions that are very good, and then you have a lot of lower positions in there. But think about those people who are salespeople at like Airbus. They are very good, and they're like a baseball player. They're very good at what they do, and people know that, and they're very highly sought after. And their people want them, so they're demanded to actually perform where they are, but at the same time they know that someone else may want them too. In each one of these let's say groups of people or individuals, they work, like it says, like a free agent. Is that they'll work here, but there's no guarantee they're going to stay with that company, because if they're selling for Airbus, they may leave and go to Embraer, or they may go to Canadair, or they may go to Boeing, and become a sales rep there, or they may become the high engineer, the high level engineers there, the person who maybe understands the frame of the plane, or they understand the way the planes are put together. Next one is what we call the fortress culture. And these are organizations that undergo massive reorganizations, and is dictated by society, by the economy. Employees often feel kind of unstable, not knowing they're going to be laid off, they're going to be staying there. There's many opportunities in these cultures, and you're very specialized, and you can move up in the culture, but it's very slow. And some people will sit there and say, well, this could be maybe like a law firm, or maybe an advertising agency. I'll give you the example. In my ad agency, is that if we were to lose some of our major accounts, we would probably get rid of certain divisions within the company because we no longer needed them. So it was always based upon, if we have a particular account, and we'll be hypothetical, we never had a Southwest Airlines account, but let's say we had Southwest Airlines and we lost to someone else, then, we had built up to handle that particular account, but now we start letting people go. You see this in a lot of the big contracting companies. For example, Halliburton. Halliburton actually goes out there and they build the oil wells for like Shell, Exxon, these people, and then they will take them apart when they're no longer needed there. Okay, that's just as long as oil is being produced. But when it gets too cheap on the market, and you're down to like, let's say $30 a barrel, they cannot make money pulling the oil out of the ground because it's just too expensive. So these big oil companies say, okay, we're not going to build any more oil wells, either out in the Gulf or on the lands or whatever it is. So a company like Halliburton, all of a sudden they say, okay, we don't need everybody. So they have to keep functioning, so they may lay off 10, 20, 30% of their staff. You can see this also with airlines too, is that it gets very competitive. You may find an airline saying, we're going to pull out of a particular market. They may not get rid of their pilots, but they will get rid of a lot of their support people in there. So fortress culture is a little bit of a scary culture to work in. It's large. You can slowly move up, but there's no guarantee that you're going to be there. And a lot of the high-tech cultures out there, like Apple and Dell Computer and Hewlett-Packard, as long as people are buying stuff, they're coming up with new items. But when they stop coming up with new items and their sales go down, they're very quick about letting go of their manufacturing. Now, when you're talking about organizational strategy, which is very important to understand culture, you got to understand that there's different strategies. So you have the corporate strategy, which deals with determining what the business operation or corporation how it will operate, followed by the business strategy, which deals how the firm will compete in each market where it conducts business. And then you have the functional strategy, and this is going to deal with how the firm manages each of the major functions, such as marketing, finance, human resources. Then you have what's called the growth strategy, and this is focusing on growing and expanding the business, how you can pursue other ventures, like I said. Then you go into the retrenchment strategy, which occurs when organizational operation is not very effective, and they say, okay, we need to go there and start making changes. So the growth strategy is out there starting to expand, but sometimes they realize we've expanded the wrong way. I'm going to show you some examples of this, and they pull back and say, okay, we need to rethink this. And you have the last one, which is called the stability factor, which says that that company is going to maintain the status quo. We're going to stay the way we are. And those strategies can be put into what we call the basic business strategies, which is the defender, the prospector, and the analyzer, and the reactor. And those are the four you really need to kind of understand. And the reason why is because every company, when they're coming up with their corporate structure, they're also coming up with their business strategy. And you as a manager of a company, you have to understand what strategy your corporation has. And that will help you how you hire people, how you keep people there, how you keep promoting people, or instead of promoting, let's say like in the case of that symphony structure, it may be more like the baseball team where you go out there and you bring in fresh talent to handle things. So we're going to go through those, and we're going to say basically the defender strategy works best in an environment where there's very little uncertainty, the risk, and the high degree of stability. So all they're really doing is they're trying to defend their position. They have a very strong position. The prospector strategy is a very dynamic, growing environment. There is a lot of uncertainty. There is a lot of risk. You see this quite often in high tech. Then you have the analyzer strategy, which works best in very stable conditions with a moderate degree of uncertainty in risk. And then you have your reactor strategy, which represents a potential strategic failure, where the firm has to jump in there and respond. Otherwise, they're going to lose their market very quickly. Now, let's look at some examples. The prospectors. Okay, this is obvious. Google, it emphasizes, like it says, growth, innovation. They're always having to come out with new products. It is a very unstable industry because in high tech, think about Apple and Samsung and Motorola and all the people who are making those cell phones out there. You've got to stay one step ahead. If you don't, you drop off the market. I think that's kind of what happened to Motorola. Google pretty much is on top of everything because they're the search engine. But now if you start looking, there's other search engines and browsers coming out. So Google's always having to go in there and not reinvent themselves, but look for other things to prospect to actually grow the company. Now, the one I enjoy the most is the Defenders, because these are very old conservative businesses. Sometimes they're new businesses, but they're very secure in their position. That's because they have a very loyal following, or they have a loyal customer base. They're very big upon the service side, maybe not as much on the product side. So someone like Apple or maybe like Google, they're always having to rethink about what is the next thing. But your Defenders do not. All they do is say, we're going to keep our base customers very, very happy. Here's a picture of the Four Seasons. Now, if you don't know anything about the Four Seasons in the Ritz-Carlton and St. Regis, these are the top hotel chains basically in the world. And the Four Seasons, I believe, is based in Canada. But I love this picture here because this is their bar. You can tell there that, you know, it's on the top of whatever the building is. All this glass around you, you're looking out, you know. So it's very much of making a statement is that when you stay at the Four Seasons, we're going to take care of you, and you're getting the best of the best of the best. Now, the reactionary. This is interesting because these are companies who actually have dropped off the radar and they have to come back on. They have a very good product, but if they don't watch out, they will strategically fail. And the firm has to respond very quickly. You sit there saying, now, Lego, what does this have to do with anything? Well, the thing about it is that, first of all, Lego's been around for a long time. They started back in the 1930s. And if you were, probably if you go to ask your parents, oh yeah, I built Legos all the time. Legos were big in the 30s, and then they started dropping off in the 40s and the 50s, and then the 60s, they almost disappeared. And then they went in there and did some revamping. They came back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and all of a sudden, you have people just loving to build all the different types of Legos. The early Legos, all you could do is maybe build a little house, you know, and because everything was just the block like you see right here. But then they started figuring out, okay, well, we're going to make a little forts, we're going to go in there and make little space sets, and we're going to make airports, and we're going to make office buildings. And then what happened is that they realized that, you know, we've got to go beyond that because people just kind of like, they're bored. You know, you could play a video game in the 80s and the 90s, or you can go build Lego blocks. Well, what's the fun building in Lego blocks? That's when they went in there and said, we've got to reinvent ourselves so that the adults now will go out and buy things for their kids that are going to interest their kids. That's why you're seeing all of a sudden Lego start saying, we're going to put wheels on things so you can build things like that. So what was before just putting blocks together, now you got different components to it. And by the way, if you've never seen it, this is a sample of the Lego logos. You can see, now first of all, did you know it came out in Denmark? I didn't know that myself. But you can see how through the years they kind of change. It was like in 1953, you started seeing they got a little bit more aggressive. Then they started kind of dying off a little bit. And then in the 60s and 70s, they really beefed up again. And they pretty much, nothing's changed since then. They've kind of figured out in the 80s and 90s how to create these different things. My youngest son has a Lego monorail. And I bought it for him back, I think, when he was like 10 or 12. He loved to build with Legos. And it's in just pristine condition. Now I think that silly thing is worth like $500 because they build them, they become collector's items. The last one we'll talk about is the Analyzer. Analyzer, they work in a very stable but a very quick changing product market. They have a domain that they can have a basic product in, but they've got to be careful because their competitors, they're watching them very carefully because the competitors obviously watch each other, will go in there and tweak a product. So the analyzer has to always be looking at the competitors to make sure that someone else doesn't grab their market. Now, think about Lego for a second. Lego, that was not their case. Legos did not have a competitor. I think some people say maybe Brios or all that, the Brio blocks. But no, what Lego was having to deal with is that the children they would stop building with the Legos. Instead, they would go and play Nintendo. So they were actually losing the whole sense of what they were doing in terms of, the whole concept of building things. Now, the analyzer is a little bit different because they've got very close, similar competitors. Coca-Cola's got Pepsi. You probably don't even know this, but the three big drinks used to be Coca-Cola, Pepsi, and RC Cola, Royal Crown Cola. And through the years, they've had to change. And this is interesting because RC Cola, you basically can't even find it in the store anymore. But it used to be the major cola. And they were, as they were changing, say, okay, we're going to do a Diet Cola. We're going to do something kind of different. We're going to make an orange drink. RC Cola didn't do it. They said, we're going to stay just with the plain regular cola. And it's hard to tell the difference sometimes between Coke and Pepsi and RC Cola. Pepsi did make some changes, and they've actually have kind of kept up, but nothing like Coca-Cola did. And you can look here, you can see that not only do they watch their competitors, but they're also watching for their competitors to see if there are new ideas they're coming up with. And this is the and to it, is they're looking for other products that can be meshed with theirs. And that's why you're seeing this here, the Coke with coffee, because they're seeing people going for the Starbucks. Even though Starbucks was not a competitor, it came in there and started taking away some of their business. So now Coke says, we cannot just do coffee in the can like Starbucks, but we can sure compete with them by doing the Coke in the can with the coffee. And if you haven't seen, here's just a sample of the bottles. And these are the bottles going back to 1899. You can see there on that particular bottles. It's kind of interesting. You can see they had a cork in it. So you pull the cork out, you just twist the cork. Not that I was there to figure it out. But then by 1900, they figured out how to put those caps on the bottles. And you see that the bottle really didn't change a whole lot. It changed some. And this only goes to 1986. And of course, if you went to the 90s and 2000, 2010, we went into the aluminum bottles, not the cans, but those aluminum bottles. And of course, you had the plastic bottles too. So it's interesting how things change. And you can see here, Coke was always looking at the competitors, and they did not change the bottles. Actually, it was the other two, Pepsi and RC Cola, who actually were changing their bottles. And Pepsi would come, okay, time for us to change our bottle too. Time for us to print on our bottles in ink instead of just embossing the bottle. We're going to stop embossing now. We're just going to print our logo in red and white. Hello class, it's Dr. Wilt. Today we're going to be talking about managing, how to be an effective manager. This particular PowerPoint video is going to be making a very interesting correlation between how managers manage in the corporate environment by looking at the way the conductors conduct an orchestra, how they look at their musicians like their staff member, and how they manage them, literally conducting them, and how they get involved in what the musicians, let's say the staff members, are seeing. So kind of let's go through here and talk about, there's several different types of managers, and you already know that. This little diagram here just kind of shows the one who's telling people what to do, the one who is leading them, and then the one who's kind of like the excitement type of person who gets all excited and they get everyone kind of riled up about things. Well, when I make this comparison, I'm making it based upon my adventures in Vienna, Austria. Now, this is a picture here of Christmas time in Vienna. This is actually not the opera house or the orchestra, where the orchestra is. This is the city hall. But they got these city markets here. And I've been to Vienna several times. I've actually taken students there, and we have gone all over, seen some different types of venues, including the opera house, listening to the symphonic orchestra playing there. And of course, here's another picture of downtown Vienna. You can see this is what we call the first ward, or the first zone, where everything is the oldest part of Vienna. Now, Vienna is pretty much known for music. And here, you've got one of the statues, but you had Mozart, Beethoven, you had all these different people in there. And every year on New Year's Day, you have what's called the Vienna New Year's Concert. And it's there at the Opera House. And this is a picture of it right here. And like I said, I've not been there for the New Year's Day concert, but I've been there for other concerts. And it's very interesting because what you cannot see here is the audience. You can see them in the balconies, but you cannot see the back part of the audience. This is a very long and narrow concert hall. And like traditional Northern Europeans, which I'm referring to Austrians and Germans, when they clap, when they have their applause, they do it in sync with each other. This goes back a long ways back in time. Pretty much goes all the way through World War II. And some of the older Germans, older Austrians, they still do it. When you hear them clapping, they're clapping in unison. So you'll hear that as we're playing some of these different video clips. I'm going to come to here in just a second. So let's talk first about how people conduct. And if you know anything about conducting, I actually was a student conductor back in my much earlier days back in school. The way you conduct is you are trying to tell the musicians when to come in. You're trying to build the excitement, but then at the same time, if you got very, very good qualified musicians, they know what they're doing. It's kind of like a very good employee. They know what to do. They don't need to be micromanaged. But some conductors really do feel like they've got to micromanage people. They feel like that they've got to really be just very, very involved with their musicians. And they almost sometimes get overwhelmed. And so I like to use this analogy of orchestra conductors like a corporate manager, because you can see a lot of comparison between the ones who they're respected by their musicians or respected by their staff, the ones who micromanage, the ones who just overdo it. They're just almost too much in terms of managing, and those who are very subtle in their managing. So we're going to take a look now at a couple of videos. Actually, it's 3 videos. The first one we're going to see here is going to be, once again, at the Opera House, and this is the Hungarian dance. Now, I want you to pay attention to this particular conductor, because he is fairly mild, and if you look at him, he does direct his staff, his musicians, very, very well. And you can see that, watch the musicians too, as they're looking at him, as they're looking at their music. You can see he really respects them, and he knows how far to push them and where to pull back and let them kind of glow with everything. So let's listen to this one. Okay, now that was kind of interesting, and let's take a look at another set of conductors. Now this is a montage of several different conductors. They're all playing the exact same music, just a little snippet of the music, but you're going to look at the way different conductors get very excited, much like a manager. And you think back about some of the managers you've had in your life, and I too have had managers who are very mild. I have some that get very excited, they get very worked up about things. Other ones they're almost ecstatic about things. It's like a lot of this, oh my gosh, they're trying to perform themselves. So anyhow, take a look at these different conductors. Well, now let's talk about those different conductors. Here's some pictures. Some of these actually were in there, but let's talk about a business manager. Some managers feel like they have to control their staff. They have to direct their staff exactly what to do. They cannot rely upon their staff to make any of their own decisions. They have to tell them exactly what to do, when to come in, when to go out. And some are very, very precise. They look at things that it has to be exactly a certain way, otherwise it is wrong. Now, some managers are very well respected. They're respected because their staff respects them and they know they actually care about their staff. And they realize the value the staff has and realize the responsibility and the knowledge. Other ones are not quite as respected by their staff. And then, of course, it says they're logical. Some people are very logical. They're very set in the way they do things. Other people are just illogical. I'm talking about managers who they're just all over the board. Now, the next short video I want you to listen to is very interesting because here's a guy, and his name is Georges. Yeah, I can't even say his name, but it's Petrus. He is, matter of fact, poor thing, he just passed away here a couple of years ago, the age of 92, and this was in 2008, so this guy was in his 80s when he was doing this performance, and this actual performance is at the Austrian Opera House. And at the end of every New Year concert, they have two songs. They have the Blue Danube by Johann Strauss. Then they have the March. And I'm going to let you listen to the March. And you will hear that everyone's clapping along with it. But what's interesting about Georges here is that this guy really knows how to manage not only his people, the musicians, but he does what is so effective. That is that he knows his people can do their job. He's worked with them for several months. He doesn't need to be up there telling them what to do. You watch. He's enjoying it himself. He's having a great time. And he's doing what a lot of managers and leaders should do. Once they've controlled the situation, they got their staff trained, they let their staff go out there and they let their staff do it. And what are they doing as a manager or leader? They're working out the stakeholders. In this case, is the audience. And you watch how George just turns around and he's working with the audience. And the main thing is he just really does love his job. So we're going to listen to him now.
Qué gestos, qué picardía, realmente es que disfruta como un niño, mejor que toda la orquesta, que desde luego disfruta, mejor que todo el público, se lo pasa George Pretre. Realmente es pues una gozada, la verdad, ver a este hombre hacer música y sobre todo hacerla con ese entusiasmo y hacerla tan maravillosamente bien. Pretre hace 2 años marcó el récord de ser el director más longevo que había dirigido el concierto de Año Nuevo, con 83 años, y lo ha pulverizado en este 2010, porque con 85 años naturalmente se vence a sí mismo, siendo el más longevo director que ha presidido esta sesión musical.
Wasn't that interesting? Wasn't it? I've had people say, what did they even need him there for? Well, you know what? They needed him for those previous months where he really worked with the orchestra to make sure they understood what they were doing. And once he got them to the perfected stage, he's kind of like, you don't need me. I'm going to have a great time. You're going to go out there. You're going to perform. And he has this total respect for those musicians like you would for a staff. And just a great comparison there. So, basically it's your choice. I love this little diagram. It says, work hard, have fun, and make history. Think about that for a second. Think about how certain managers out there always pull in Steve Jobs sometimes. He worked hard. Oh gosh, I'm not sure he had much fun. He was actually not a very good manager. Unfortunately, what he was doing, he was kind of taking credit, and he was kind of beat up on his employees. But he did make history, and the problem is he made it in a negative way in terms of management. It was a positive way in terms of him being an inventor and entrepreneur, but in terms of being a manager, it's kind of negative. So it says here over on the sides, you have to have fun as a manager or not. You know, that's your choice. All these are your choices. You can have fun or you can not have fun by being too stressed, tensed up, worried about everything. For your department and your staff to have fun, or maybe not. If you're enjoying yourself and you're really respecting letting them do what they're so good at, they're going to have fun too. And they're going to realize that you respect them. It also says it's your choice for you to be known as someone who encourages, enjoys his or her staff. You know, sometimes we find in management people who are working for a manager, they feel like they're not appreciated. That person who's managing is not encouraging them. He's not enjoying or she's not enjoying the staff. Instead, they feel like they have to micromanage. They're more like a disciplinarian. They act like a parent instead of acting like a supporter, like a cheerleader. For people to want to work with and for you. And that's interesting because when you look at George's back here as the conductor, every year the orchestra, now he is a guest conductor every year for that New Year's concert. They have a guest conductor coming in, and the orchestra always wanted him to come because that's so much fun with him. They really wanted to work with him, and they knew that he would work with them. They had such a great time, and that's what you want from your staff. You want your people to want to be with you, want to work with you, want to do things to make everyone successful. And then the last thing here it says, for you to leave behind something wonderful and meaningful. Because see, that's part of it, of what you're trying to do. Yes, you're just going to be a manager sometime in your life, and you're going to manage people, but what you want to leave behind is you want to leave behind a legacy that is wonderful, is meaningful, that there's value to it, and that people get excited about it. Now, you know, once again, I'm not going to play it again, but just in case you missed George, kind of click back through this video and listen to him again and watch once again. It's the second time you watch the way he conducts and how he has such a good time. He's sitting there looking, smiling. People say, oh, he's just an old man. No, this guy just really, he knows he's probably right now the best or was the best symphonic conductor in the world. I'm going to finish this with what is it to be a good manager? Albert Einstein, you know, always has great quotes. Always look at his quotes. Two of them here. Try not to become a man of success, but rather try to become a man of value. There's a lot of truth in there. You know, you could be successful, but really you need to be of value. You need to be value to the stakeholders, and that is your customers, your shareholders, your board of directors, but primarily your employees. Be of value to them. And the last thing it says here, you never fail until you stop trying. One of the problems managers do sometimes, they just stop. They're kind of like, you know, I just can't do this anymore. And once you stop, you start to fail. And with that, folks, that's the end. I hope you enjoyed it. I certainly enjoyed this. I love listening to those concerts. Class, welcome back to my room. And by the way, you know this is not my house. I put this up because, you know, I see so many different versions of where people, and matter of fact, I look at y'all sometimes particularly on Zoom, and you know, the way you've got your room set up is so very important. And some of y'all most of y'all do an awesome job, if not all of y'all, on that part. This actually is a screen. This is not a green screen either. This is actually, look at this. You see how it moves? Yeah. This is a piece of fabric. And if you got really close to it, it looks like a cartoon. But it's not a cartoon. It's actually the way they make it where it looks like it's real. And so I've had people say to me, well, I don't tell them it's my house. I said, wow, where'd you have that? Is that like at one of the old buildings at UT? And I'm kind of like, no, this is my house. This is right here in my house. And they're kind of like, that is so cool. And then I tell them, yeah, if you see behind it, you would see just, you know, a bedroom or whatever it is. Y'all have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Make sure you watch the recorded video. I will see you back on Zoom. Remember, no class on Monday the 30th or on December 1st in the classrooms. But we do have the class via Zoom. That'll be our last lecture. It will be on human resources, which is a very important topic. In your presentations are due and your documents are due for that capstone on that same day, on November 30th for all classes, even though your class may meet on Tuesday, December 1st. And then the following week, which starts on December 7th, that is the day of the exam. And once again, there will be no class, no Zoom. Same thing as we had before, where I will put the exam on at 12:01 p.m., right at noon, and close this at 6. You will have 75 minutes for the exam, so it's cutting down from 90 to 75 minutes. There will be 50 questions. I've mentioned to y'all that it's a little bit more difficult this time, just because this time, because we do pull from publisher questions, and we put our questions in there too. I mean, I've got several of my own questions too. But where last time it was in the chronological view of the book, chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, all that, this one's a little different because it's taking those chapters, which I think is like 10, 11, 12, 13, and all that, but it's mixing the questions together. So you will have to, if you're going to be searching for it, you're going to have to search a little bit harder. Now, that tells you is that you really kind of need to understand the questions, make sure you've read the text. And the other thing is that these questions get more into critical thinking. Last time, they're very much just into, just look it up, see what the meaning is, and you can answer it. This one here, they give you a little bit more of a situation you have to read and think about. And when they do that, it gives you a true false. Sometimes it gives you multiple choice too. But in those true false, basically got a 50-50 chance. Now, that doesn't mean that, makes it any easier, because what I've seen on true false, unlike multiple choice, the true and false sometimes are fairly close. It's not so obvious. Where on the multiple choice, pretty much you can look at it and say, A and B are completely wrong. It's between C and D. So questions typically have where it's a little bit, it's hard just to make a guess on that. But there are no essays. There's no short answers on this one. Purely everything is true and false, or it's going to be multiple choice. Of course, as always, if you got any questions, let me know. We'll be talking again on Monday the 30th and Tuesday the 1st, and we'll be doing our Zoom meeting. Y'all have a wonderful Thanksgiving. I'll talk to you back in class. See you then.